So, again, as usual, let me just give you the gist of what she has said in the previous para, okay, so that we get the sense of continuity. So, so just 1 second. Yeah. We have discussed, I'm reading out the summary of what you said earlier. Okay. Shilpa, good morning.
Good morning, Rangadhar. Good morning, everybody.
So we are starting on 548, page 548, our world knowledge. But before that, I am going to give you the gist of what we said earlier so that we know what where we are and what we are talking about. We have discussed knowledge by identity, knowledge by identity, by the example of our understanding of our own thoughts and emotions. Okay. But we don't know the thoughts and emotions of others. So knowledge by identity, because I know myself. We cannot have the same type of knowledge about the external world because we are cut off from it materially, emotionally, and mentally. Okay? We cannot identify ourselves. We cannot identify ourselves with other beings in spite of similarity of nature. We know not their inner thoughts or emotions as we know our own, however incompletely. Of course, I don't know myself fully. In fact, there are so many emotions and things going on inside me which I'm not aware of. Afterwards, you discover that, oh, there are hidden motives. Okay, so that's incompletely. Then, the only link with the external world is through our senses, and these convey very partial and defective information to us because our senses are defective. Our eyes are not perfect. There are many animals which have got much better eyes than we have. Our even the sensitivity is not as good as many other animals. Okay, just to give one example of the animal world, the eagle has got such sharp eyes that even from 2 miles up in the sky, it will be able to discern its prey, maybe a small rabbit, but it will be able to see clearly. We can't see that clearly. Okay, then the other example is the chameleon. It's got a very interesting, it can go on moving its eyeball. We can't do that. So it goes on focusing wherever it wants, the camel. So the chameleon. So what I mean is, that our senses are very defective. Okay? Our sense of smell is certainly not as sharp as that of a dog. A dog is so sensitive its nose that it can detect even drugs in an airport. That's what they use their dogs for that. Even they use dogs for getting people out of an earthquake debris. When there is an earthquake and the building breaks down, they use sniffer dogs for getting to know. And as soon as they know that there is something there, the dog starts barking. And then you start removing the rubble so that you can save that man. So that's what I'm saying. The only link with the external world is through our senses, and these convey very partial and defective information to us. We know not externals except by their images in our sense mind, which receives sense data through eye, ear, nose, etc. This is very similar to the reception of images in a camera, because the camera is not interpreting the images, just recording the image. But our mind sense, okay, that's what he will explain now. The retina is only creating the image, falling on its surface. Now, but we have a vital mind and reason which fill in information otherwise lacking from the manas. So Srimad is saying the vital mind starts interpreting. Okay, that's a manas, which fill in information otherwise lacking from the manas, vital mind. Sorry, the manas is the physical mind. It receives the images and the vital mind is interpreting. Oh, that tree I have seen earlier. Oh, that man's face, I have seen him somewhere earlier. Oh, he must be such and such a person. So there is the interpretation which the vital mind gives. When man relates image to corresponding object because of mental intuition, example of this is we recognize a voice and identify the man, which a tape recorder cannot do, nor can the camera relate image to external objects. Now, this is a very interesting experience. Our senses, when you are listening to a tape and the man is not there, okay, we can recognize the identity of the singer by the voice, and that the tape recorder cannot do. Okay, the sound is just sound for him, but this the tape recorder cannot do, nor can the camera. Camera also cannot relay image to external object. But when I see a photograph, my vital mind comes in and says, "Oh, this is a picture of so and so." This function is not there in the mechanical camera or the tape recorder. So that's it. It's very interesting how we don't think of all these things. But still we're explaining so clearly. Okay, the vital mind interprets. Cannot do, nor can the camera relate image to external object. If there were only a composite intuition with direct contact with external object, reason would not be needed. This is what happens in the self. When you go to the self, your reason is not there anymore because there is no thinking. Neither reason nor gross senses would be necessary. There is in the self a direct contact with external objects without intervention of gross senses and reason, because mind has become silent. So you must remember again, that's why it is so important to know the nature of the self. The self, the Brahman consciousness, the Atman, silent witness, all these are different words for the same experience. Where your mind has fallen silent, your consciousness has gone to the first level of the level 2, spiritual planes of consciousness. This type of knowledge gives a much more complete picture. So naturally, when you go to the self, your understanding of things is 10 times more. Okay? Because I can now see other people's thoughts. I can see their emotions, which I could not do when I was in my mind, body-mind life. So naturally, it's much, much better, the knowledge. Now, but in our normal waking consciousness, since direct contact is absent, we have to use indirect contact of the gross senses. The supplementary filling in of information on the sense data is necessary. Yet it is open to question for accuracy and verity and truth. This is what happens with animals who depend entirely on sense knowledge. But man's reason corrects the knowledge of the senses. And that also not fully, because sometimes you may recognize somebody and you, oh, you are so and so. But the person will tell you, sorry, I am not that person. So we can make a mistake even with our sense data. That's what they said in this previous para. Okay. So now we can, this is what we have done in the previous para. Now we will read our world knowledge is therefore a difficult structure. So Yasmin and Archana, normally you start. Any of you have got the text? If any of you have got the text?
Rangada, we have read that passage.
We have read the text.
Oh.
We have read the text,
I
Rangada.
don't
We have to
have
redo it.
Life Divine with me.
Okay.
The Life Divine I can't
Anyway, we have to.
read.
Yeah. Okay.
Rangada, you have to do it. We
That's
don't have
fine.
to read it. I have the
That's
text,
fine.
but you have to do it.
Okay. I'll read each sentence. Our world knowledge, that's it, of the external, our world knowledge, not psychological inner knowledge, is therefore a difficult structure made up of the imperfect documentation of the sense image and intuitional interpretation of it by perceptive mind, the life mind and sense mind, and supplementary filling up, correction, addition of supplementary knowledge, coordination by the reason. Okay? All this is necessary. That's what we're listening. Our world knowledge is therefore a difficult structure because it's a mechanism of the senses made up of the imperfect documentation of the sense image. Not the word documentation. Okay, it's just a photograph or an image or a writing on a piece of paper. It has to be interpreted. imperfect documentation of the sense image. And into even our sound, okay? When the sound is coming and goes to the brain, it's only sounds. The brain is interpreting the sound and saying this is this, this is that. Okay? And that work is done by, so they're saying, the perceptive mind, the life mind, and sense. The imperfect documentation of the sense image and intuitional interpretation of it by perceptive mind, life mind, and sense mind, and a supplementary filling up, correction, addition of supplementary knowledge, coordination by the reason. Okay? So this is a difficult, or this is a difficult, this is the mechanisms in this game, and saying this is a very difficult structure. Even so, our knowledge of the world we live in is narrow and imperfect. Our interpretations of its significance doubtful. Imagination, speculation, reflection, impartial weighing and reasoning, inference, measurement, testing, a further correction and amplification of sense evidence by science. This is the method C. Srivastava is not a scientist himself, but he's so sure of what he's saying. Impartial weighing, okay? Reasoning, inference, measurement and testing. These are all the methods of science. Okay? You want to be 100% sure. Even our temperature in the body is measured by science. Okay. You know exactly. So when you know the temperature goes too low, it is dangerous. When it goes too high, it is dangerous and you have to take countermeasures. So it is so important. Measurement, testing. To verify something, you have to want testing. And also inference. Okay? That also is known method of knowledge. In philosophy also, they mentioned inference. And the inference is not always very correct, but it is also. The example of inference in Indian philosophy is, if there is smoke on the hill, you can infer that there is a fire. This is the example given for inference. It's a source of knowledge, but imperfect. So all these things come in to help the interpretation of the senses. Okay? So all these apparatus had to come in to complete the incompleteness. Okay? So, after all, oh sorry, not after all. After all that is, after all that the result still, after all, that the result still remains half certain, half dubious explanation of acquired indirect knowledge. Okay? I'll stop here and we'll give proper value to acquired indirect knowledge. First of all, indirect, we have explained. It is through the senses that I am getting the knowledge, not directly. Direct knowledge is possible at the level of level 2, a spiritual plane of consciousness. I don't need senses to see the thoughts of others and to make out their emotions also. I don't need. So that is direct knowledge. But it is separated. Now, acquired. Acquired is very interesting because you have to gather information. The information is not in you and you have to get it and store it in yourself. So that is acquired knowledge. Note interestingly that all the education that we are getting, okay, so much importance is given to education, and it's true, but it's only acquired knowledge. It's not inherent knowledge. Spiritual knowledge is inherent. You remember, it's not that you acquire it. When you rise to a certain plane of consciousness, that plane of consciousness reveals its own nature. That is inherent knowledge. Your soul has gone into a level of consciousness in the spiritual planes, and your substance has become that substance. So it reveals itself. That is not acquired knowledge, it is inherent knowledge. So acquired knowledge is applicable at level 1 through the senses. Okay? All science is only acquired knowledge and put down into books. Okay? Acquired indirect knowledge through the senses. A mass of significant images and ideative representations with ideas. Okay? An abstract thought counters, hypotheses, theories, generalizations, but also with all that a mass of doubts and a never-ending debate and inquiry. That's why all philosophies, however good their knowledge, they are always fighting among themselves. Okay? And also mass of doubt. Science also, there are so many different interpretations of the data that you have got. Okay? It's so simple that even at our level, 2 people, 3 people, if you put 2 people, 3 people together, they will all have different ideas because the knowledge being gathered through the senses is imperfect. Although mind is coming in, life mind is coming in and supplementing all these things, you are using your imagination, your things, inference and logic, still it is incomplete. And that's why I said this. So, representations, abstract thought, counters, hypotheses, theories, generalizations, but also with all that, a mass of doubts and a never-ending debate and inquiry. By the way, even into the spiritual planes of consciousness, this doubt and inquiry go right up to the second level also. That's why you have so many philosophies. You have the Advaita, you have the Dvaita, and you have the so many others. There's Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhvacharya. Each one is different. Shankara is saying the human soul is essentially the divine. There is no difference. Then Ramanuja says there is a difference. There is the whole and the parts. And there is a relation between them. But a part can also become the whole. The human soul, which is a part of the world soul, can become one and yet have relations with them. Whereas Madhvacharya's philosophy and others also, Nimbarka, I think, they say that no, the individual soul can have a relation with the divine. It can have a relation of love, intimacy, but not identity. So these are all, even in the spiritual field, there are differences and arguments and counter arguments. That's what we say. Okay. Now, but also with all that, a mass of doubts and a never-ending debate and inquiry. Never-ending. When will it end? It will all end in only the third level of the Superman. There it will end. All debate will be put to rest. Power has come with knowledge, but our imperfection of knowledge leaves us without any idea of the true use of the power, even of the aim towards which our, 1 second. So, when we don't know, we don't have knowledge, we cannot use the power. Even if we have power, we don't know how to use it. Okay, there was a very interesting movie, a Russian movie, and which said very clearly that we have now tremendous physical power. Today's paper says that there are 12,000 nuclear warheads ready all over the world, possessed by about 9 countries. But our moral development is so weak that we don't know what to do with it. We may blow up ourselves anytime. Even Sri Aurobindo says once that certainly there is a danger, he warns, that this can happen. So we don't know how to use the power. We have the power, but we don't know how to use it because of lack of knowledge and development, psychological development. So this is true also of the spiritual planes of consciousness. Those who go to level 2 and get power, the knowledge is not complete and ego is there, then they use it in the wrong way. Okay? So power has come with knowledge, but our imperfection of knowledge leaves us without any idea of the true use of the power, even of the aim towards which our utilization of knowledge and power should be turned and made effective. See, even in the medical field, okay, we have a lot of knowledge about what illnesses are, but are we sure of the cure? Now they are thinking so many times that we are not sure of the cure at all. Okay, even this recent COVID. Okay, now they have realized that all these counter, what is it called? The inoculations. All, they have not had any effect at all. So, there is worsened. This is worsened by the imperfection of our self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, psychological knowledge. He has been talking about the other knowledge in the world knowledge, but now self-knowledge is psychological knowledge, ourselves, which, such as it is, meager and pitifully insufficient, we don't know ourselves at all, is of our surface only a body-mind life, but not the intra-conscient, the supra-conscient, the subliminal. We don't know anything at all of our apparent phenomenal self and nature. Self and nature, simply saying apparent phenomenal self. That's the body-mind life. Apparent. Why apparent? Because you feel that it is a real part of you, but it's not the real part of you. Okay? Phenomenal self and nature. And not about true self. Which is the true self? Your soul or your psychic being, different words, or yourself, the Brahmic consciousness. And the true meaning of our existence, we do not know. Self-knowledge and self-mastery are wanting in the user, wisdom, and right will in its use. 1 second. My computer has jumped. And right will in its use of world power and world knowledge. So we don't know all this. That's what I'm saying. Neither we have self-knowledge nor we have self-mastery. Are wanting in the user. User, who is the user? Man. Wisdom and right will in its use of the world power and world knowledge. We don't have that. Are wanting, are lacking. That's what we say. Okay. So we go to he is discussing the different types of knowledge. No? Knowledge by identity and separated knowledge. So all this he has discussed the separated knowledge. So now we go to the next. We have enough time. We will read the next very small paragraph. It is evident.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm reading.
Yeah,
It is evident that our state on the surface is indeed a state of knowledge, so far as it goes, but a limited knowledge enveloped and invaded by ignorance, and to a very large extent, by reason of its limitation, itself a kind of ignorance, at best a mixed knowledge ignorance. It could not be otherwise, since our awareness of the world is born of a separative and surface of observation with only an indirect means of cognition at its disposal. Our knowledge of ourselves, though more direct, is stultified by its restriction to the surface of our being, by an ignorance of our true self, the true sources of our nature, the true motive forces of our action. It is quite evident that we know ourselves, but with only a superficial knowledge. The sources of our consciousness and thought are a mystery. The true nature of our mind, emotions, sensations is a mystery. Our cause of being and our end of being, the significance of our life and its activities are a mystery. This could not be if we had a real self-knowledge and a real world knowledge.
So, very small para, and it's very clear actually. I'll quickly go through. It is evident, very, very clear that our state on the surface, that is level 1, when we are aware only of our body-mind life and we are not aware at all of our soul, is indeed a state of knowledge. So it's accepting that it's a knowledge. After all, this knowledge of the is a very graded thing. No? First of all, there is a worm and a small caterpillar, okay, it's moving. So then we have bigger animals, more and more senses become operative. And there are creatures with 1 sense, 2 senses, 3 senses, 4 senses, 5 senses. And finally you have man who has, apart from senses, he also has a mind. So much better knowledge of the world and a little bit of himself. But it is still very defective. That's what I say. It is evident that our state on the surface is indeed a state of knowledge. We do know something. So far as it goes, very limited. But a limited knowledge enveloped and invaded by ignorance, and to a very large extent, by reason of its limitation, itself a kind of ignorance. Although we have some amount of knowledge, it's a kind of ignorance. The knowledge itself is an ignorance. At best, a mixed knowledge ignorance. There is a condition of mind. That's why it's called avidya. Okay. It could not be otherwise, since our awareness of the world is born of a separative and surface observation with only an indirect means of cognition at its disposal. So just to remind you, indirect means is between the knower and to be known, there are senses. So it is indirect. Like when I want to know the stars, I have to use a telescope. So there's something in between me and the stars. Exactly in the same way, between me and what I want to know at the minutest level, I have to use a microscope. Exactly in the same way, if I want to know anything in the world, I have to use my senses. So that's it. Separated, but also indirect. Separated because even if I see you, you are you and I am I. Okay, there is separation. Whereas that separation disappears in the cosmic consciousness. If you know the opposite, then we'll understand separated. And surface observation with only an indirect means of cognition. Indirect means sense knowledge at its disposal. Our knowledge of ourselves, this is the psychological knowledge, not world knowledge, though more direct, is stultified, very much stultified. It is injured, lame, if you want, by its restriction to the surface of the being. We are only aware about very, very shallow thoughts and very, very shallow emotions, but not the deeper emotions and the deeper capacity of thought we are not aware of. By an ignorance of our true self, psychic being, or the self, the true sources of our nature. Which are the true sources of our nature? The true source of our body is universal matter. The true source of my vital is universal prana. The true source of my mind is the universal mental plane. Okay? And the true source of my psychic being is the very divine at the highest level. They are the true sources. And all these we don't know at all. The true motive forces of our action. So which is giving you motive force? That also we don't know. It is quite evident that we know ourselves only with only a superficial knowledge. The sources of our consciousness and thought are a mystery. From where are my thoughts coming? Where is my consciousness coming? The true nature of our mind, emotion, sensation is a mystery. Our cause of being and our end of being, the significance of our life and its activities are a mystery. This could not be if we had real self-knowledge and real world knowledge. You ask any average man, why have you come on earth? What is the purpose? He'll give you a blank stare. He will not know. But there are some children who ask themselves, from where have I come? Okay, then some children ask their mother, from where did you get me? How have I come into you? So if they are, sometimes they explain, they say, you come from my tummy, or they will tell you, if they are a little humorous, they will tell you, I have purchased you in the market. I know that somebody did say that. Okay, so this is what a child asks himself. What is the purpose of life? Okay. There is very interesting, there used to be a lady called Eleanor Montgomery. Okay. She was from a very well-to-do family and she was an American. And she has written a very beautiful, she wrote to Sri Aurobindo when he was still there. And she wanted to, she came here to Pondicherry also for a long time. She used to come. And unfortunately, I'm going a little beyond the life divine. She was very rich and she left all her riches to the ashram. But there are other relatives who intervened and they spoiled the whole thing. So that money could not come to the ashram. But she was a very well-to-do person. And she had the experience of the self. I'm being very frank because it's available openly. Okay? When she was in bed with her husband. Okay, she has suddenly shot up and she had the experience herself. And she is wondering what all this is about. And she writes to Sri Aurobindo that what is the purpose of life? Why am I here? I had this experience. And even in the physical world, the worst possible conditions where I could have this experience. So when you are spiritually ready, these physical conditions don't matter at all. You will come to it. So she used to come here, Helena Montgomery. They're telling you all this because she wrote to Sri Aurobindo, what is the purpose of life? From where have I come? What is it that I should do? You have to guide me. And she came here. But of course, by that time, Sri Aurobindo was not seeing anyone. But he has replied to her. It's very interesting. It's there. Helena Montgomery. She was quite a humorous person also. So, this is what Sri Aurobindo is saying in this para. Now, we have got 4 or 5 minutes. We can read another para. This is a very small para. Yasmin, you have the text?
No, life divine I don't have.
Okay, then we can go to somebody else. Sunki, if you have the text, you can read.
Yes, I can read.
Okay, go ahead. If we look for the reason. Today we'll only read it. Okay, Sunki, you are having trouble with your internet. So, okay, we'll stop here. We'll do this next time. Tomorrow. In fact, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll read it tomorrow and discuss it. So we can stop now.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
I'm sorry.
No, but
There's some internet problem. You can't help it.
Yes.
it is dancing. Okay. So if we look for the reason, this we'll do tomorrow. Okay.
Yes.
Five.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Au
Thank
revoir.
you, Radha.
Thank you.